What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. We are exactly 1 week away from UFC 321 taking place in Abu Dhabi. I cannot wait. We have for the title fight, Ciryl Gane taking on Tom Aspinall for the heavyweight strap. And I'm very excited for this fight. I may be one of the few that is extraordinarily excited, but I'm excited nonetheless. Now, there have been some talks, in particular on the Ariel Helwani show, on his YouTube channel called The Crack. There's been some talk of what would happen if Ciryl Gane wins this fight. And I think that's a great thing to consider because everybody's talking about, hey, what should we do for the White House card? It needs to be Aspinall versus Jones, or it needs to be Aspinall in the super fight. And it's like Aspinall's got a huge fight coming up in 1 week for the heavyweight strap events against a very tough competitor, and everybody's writing Ciryl Gane off. Ciryl Gane, who nearly beat Francis Ngannou. I know Francis Ngannou had a leg injury, but still, he nearly beat Francis Ngannou. And I know people are writing him off because of how quickly he was beaten by Jon Jones. But it's a very difficult fight. And if you also ask Volkov, okay, who fought both Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane, I think he's a pretty reputable source. He thinks the fight is 50-50. He said that a couple months ago. And I, for one, believe him. I think it's a tricky fight. Even MMA Guru, other MMA YouTubers have also said much the same, that it's not a given that Tom Aspinall is going to win. And especially in the heavyweight division where anything can happen and you have a powerful striker like Ciryl Gane. So I would not count Ciryl Gane out. I'm a big fan of Ciryl Gane. I like his personality. I love his fight style. I love the way he moves. He's very light on his feet. I love his kickboxing style. It's awesome. So I'm very, very excited, and I do think Ciryl Gane has a real chance to win. But here's the question that was brought up in particular, and this is what I want to dispute because I disagree with this take vehemently, and I think the reason why these guys are saying Ciryl Gane would be a disaster as a heavyweight champ is because these are part of that same tribe that has just championed Tom Aspinall being the best heavyweight on the planet for so long, saying that Jon Jones was ducking him. Jon Jones is running away, and Jon Jones needs to fight him, and he's only not fighting him because Tom Aspinall would win. And I never fully agreed with that. I actually felt that Jon Jones would have probably gotten the victory over Tom Aspinall. So I think they're saying this because they want to further that narrative that Jon Jones ran away and Tom Aspinall is the greatest. And he may be. We'll see what happens with Tom Aspinall. But I think that's where this comes from. Now, I'm going to let this clip play, and it's a lengthy clip, so I'm going to stop it at different points where he makes a point, and I'm going to dispute it because I think I tend to disagree with many of the takes that this gentleman has right here. So check this out.
Well, the question that kind of set us off was somebody wrote in and they were like, am I crazy for thinking that a Ciryl Gane win next weekend would be a lot more interesting, would open up more interesting doors for what we could do in the heavyweight division? And I was just like, no, it would be a disaster and a crisis of legitimacy. You know, if he wins the fight, he wins the fight. Good for him. That's the thing that separates this from pro wrestling, is that the stuff we want to happen or we think makes sense to happen doesn't always happen. But I think if you picture the situation right now at heavyweight is that, you know, you had a champion in Francis Ngannou who was the lineal MMA heavyweight champion, and then he walks away from the UFC with the belt. So we got to grab a new belt out of the supply closet. We have Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane fight over it. Jon Jones beats him easily, just cuts right through Ciryl Gane like a hot knife through butter. And then you turn around, Jon Jones, instead of doing the fight that would make the most sense against Tom Aspinall, handpicks his opponent in Stipe Miocic, an aged version of Stipe Miocic, all very calculated on Jon Jones's part. He wanted to get that name on the resume, stick that pelt on the wall, and then leave. And that leaves us in like a bad spot for the heavyweight division. Tom Aspinall gets promoted to heavyweight champion, and it's kind of just good luck for the UFC that they had him sitting around as interim champ, already a believable guy as heavyweight champion. You look at Tom Aspinall and you go, yeah, that seems like that might be the baddest big man on the planet. And you have him to carry you forward and to kind of bridge that gap of legitimacy that you lost when you lost Francis Ngannou. But if he goes out there and if he loses to Ciryl Gane, people are going to be looking and saying, well, Gane is 0-2 in title fights. Lost to both Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones, the two guys who we would have otherwise called heavyweight champion if they hadn't just pieced up out of the UFC in their own various ways. And so if you have Ciryl Gane now with the strap around his waist, I don't know if anybody's looking at him and going, yeah, that's the best heavyweight on the planet.
Okay, we're going to pause it right there. I actually let it play for longer than I intended, but I let him continue his point. So I'm going to challenge him on multiple accounts. So he's saying there'd be a crisis of legitimacy stemming back to Francis Ngannou stepping away from the UFC. I wholeheartedly disagree, and I can explain why. First of all, nobody's even talking about Francis. He had that one MMA fight, then he had that really bad, he had the great boxing match against Tyson Fury where he arguably won. Then he had that horrible loss to Anthony Joshua, had the MMA fight. I can't remember the order of which. I think he's talking about now another boxing match against Deontay Wilder or something like that. I really don't think people are thinking there's a major crisis of legitimacy, and we're still thinking about Francis Ngannou. On top of that, Francis Ngannou fought Cyril Gane. He had whether he had a leg injury or, I mean, he did. He had something majorly wrong with his knee. But regardless, if you just look at the fight, he went in a hard-fought 5 rounds against Cyril Gane, and Cyril Gane arguably could have won that fight had he not gone for a heel hook in round 5. So if you compare, and I know you can't always say MMA math in this way, like, oh, John Jones's win was that much more easy over Cyril Gane, so John Jones would beat Francis Ngannou. I know that doesn't always work, but sometimes that works in the minds of fans. Therefore, no crisis of legitimacy. Francis Ngannou had a hard-fought battle with Cyril Gane, barely edged out a victory, arguably because Cyril Gane made a mistake in round 5. John Jones went in there and smoked him early in round 1. So the crisis of legitimacy, as we're saying, I think is a fairy tale, is made up, because I think people already buy into the fact it would be an interesting fight to see Jones versus Francis Ngannou, but they buy into the fact that when you do that cross comparison, okay, John Jones is superior. John Jones is the baddest man on the planet. Now let's come to Tom Aspinall. He's saying, oh, it's great that Tom Aspinall came in and he was sitting there because he could get promoted. Sure, I'll agree with that, especially with the stuff that Tom Aspinall has done during that time when John Jones fought Stipe Miocic, which was planned well before Tom Aspinall became interim champ, by the way. He's not acknowledging that notion, or that fact. But we already have John Jones atop the hill. If Cyril Gane goes in and beats Tom Aspinall, all that does is all the people that it basically affects all the people that have been talking so proudly and confidently about Tom Aspinall beating John Jones. What that will do is say, oh, wait a minute, John Jones, and I know it doesn't always work like this, but John Jones whooped Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane smashed Tom Aspinall. Well, maybe Tom Aspinall wasn't all that we thought. Dude, holy smokes. When we saw Cyril Gane go in there and do what he did to Tom Aspinall, man, John Jones would have probably annihilated him. Okay, so Tom isn't who we thought he was. So it's not going to create any crisis of legitimacy. It's just going to put John Jones squarely atop the mountain right now. And why is this not a bad thing? Because Cyril Gane can get the strap. He can be champion. That's fine for a number of reasons, one of which is he'll be the first ever French-born UFC champ. I know he was an interim champ before, but now he'll be the undisputed heavyweight champ. That's going to be great for the UFC, great for the French fan base. And I really, really like Cyril Gane, and I think he would be an awesome champion. Number 2, if we do think ahead now to the UFC White House card, what that opens up is 2 very interesting possibilities. Number 1, Alex Pereira. Let's say he moves up to heavyweight. I would much rather, me personally, see Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane because they both have amazing kickboxing skills. I will see a banger of a fight versus Tom Aspinall too, but I would love to see Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane. I think it would be a beautiful fight. We'll see amazing kickboxing. We'll see Cyril Gane, who said himself he's been working a lot in his ground game and his jiu-jitsu. We'll see him go up against Alex Pereira, and we'll see what he can do, and let's let them fight it out. But the other possibilities it opens up is if you have Cyril Gane as heavyweight champ and John Jones beats Cyril Gane, right? You could also arguably say, you know what? Alex Pereira could go up and fight Cyril Gane, but he's going to elect to fight John Jones because now it's not like if Tom Aspinall wins and Alex Pereira decides to fight John Jones, people are going to be like, wait a minute, you're dodging the more difficult fight because Tom Aspinall just smashed Cyril Gane. You're dodging that to go for John Jones to get this super fight. And it's kind of cool, but like, dude, you should be fighting for the heavyweight strap. Okay. Now, in this case, it allows him to have a justifiable super fight for the BMF belt or no belt, but I think it should be for the BMF belt. It allows him to go up and have a BMF title fight, which will be legit, because everybody would say, all right, yes, Cyril is the heavyweight champ, but John Jones obviously is the baddest man on the planet. He smashed Cyril Gane. We don't even need him to fight again. We all view him as the greatest fighter right now. Put him against Alex Pereira, who is getting he's getting close to that Mount Rushmore position with all the amazing things that he's been through, and he keeps climbing back after falling down, getting belt after belt after belt. And now we let these two guys figure it out for the BMF. Neither of them have a BMF title. Let them get that title, whether it's Jon Jones or Alex Pereira. What an amazing climactic fight at the UFC White House. And you have Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira. These are two huge stars, and I'm sorry, maybe Tom Aspinall can get there one day, but right now he's not there. Ciryl Gane right now definitely is not there. It opens up this incredible possibility. So to me, I think these guys are so far off the mark in terms of saying that this would be a disaster. I think actually this is the outcome that I want. I would love to see this. Now, the last thing I'll say, okay, is I'm rooting for Ciryl Gane here. People have gone and tried to say Jon Jones is a duck and he's running away and all these things for so long. We don't know the full situation, and we don't even know what would have happened in that fight. Everybody's saying, oh, well, he just didn't want the narrative just got built and fed and grew out of control that Jon Jones is ducking, and he clearly thinks he would lose to Tom Aspinall. That's why he's not taking the fight. I think many great minds in the sport, Daniel Cormier included, believe that Jon Jones would have beaten Ciryl Gane. And as this narrative is run out of control and taken on a life of its own without true logic behind it, I actually don't mind that Ciryl Gane would go in there and just with a flip of a switch, if he does get that victory, that narrative would fade into obscurity, because I think it should fade away for the most part. I think it was a bit unfair and premature to just write it off. And it was a lot of Jon Jones haters that were pushing this narrative that he was ducking Tom Aspinall. I mean, you call it what you want. He stepped away. He chose not to fight. He has the freedom and free will to do that. Was it going to be a difficult fight? It probably was. But fighters make these types of choices all the time. He just happened to do it on a big stage as the heavyweight champ. Like, I know it was holding up the vision, and that was a problem. But to say that this invariably means that he would have lost to Tom Aspinall, I think is unfair, and I think it's short-sighted, and I think is incorrect. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. I actually think Ciryl Gane winning next weekend would be a great outcome for the UFC and for fans, because it opens up all these very, very fascinating fights. Now, it will be a bit embarrassing for the folks that have just push Tom Aspinall to be the greatest fighter by a long shot, that he would smash Jon Jones. Like, I get that, but that's the way it goes. Sometimes we all make our predictions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but that's the fun of the game. So anyways, there's my 2 cents. This would not be a disaster. This is the desired outcome, in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And who do you got winning and why? Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.